The Galactic Empire's capital world burned, imperial banners smoldering to ash as human dropships scorched the sky. Emperor Solaris knelt in surrender, face twisted in disbelief at the ruin the tiny humans unleashed. 5 years earlier, in 2238, Robert Allen entered Emperor Solaris's grand throne room on Nova Prime, heart-pounding. The Andromedan ruler lounged on a dais of crimson metal, humanoid but 9 feet tall, with alabaster skin and eyes blazing like trapped suns. "Your species is now a vassal of the Galactic Empire," Solaris declared. His bass voice reverberated off fluted metal columns. "You will provide 80% of your mineral wealth and 5 million slaves annually. Refusal means planetary bombardment." Allen's jaw clenched. "Earth is an independent world. We don't—" "Silence!" Solaris smashed a fist on his throne. "Behold the might you defy." Her hologram flared, projecting a dizzying expanse of space. 1,000 warships hung against the void, each a 5-mile wedge bristling with cannons. "My Sunfire-class dreadnoughts," Solaris sneered. "Their plasma lances shatter continental plates. Their singularity missiles rip worlds asunder. No force withstands them. You have 30 solar cycles to comply." Allen's blood ran cold as the terrible sight faded. Solaris smiled, a slash of teeth and malice. "Run home, little primate. Prepare your people for servitude." Allen turned on his heel and strode out, spine straight, face grim. Humanity had a month to find some way, any way, to preserve their freedom against crushing odds. The alternative was slavery and death. But the Emperor, smug in his throne room, never imagined the depths of defiance, valor, and sheer implacable will that lurked in the human heart. Robert Allen strode into the UN Security Council chamber, his expression grave. The representatives fell silent as he took his place at the podium. "I come bearing grim tidings," Allen began. "The Andromedan Empire possesses a vast armada of warships, each capable of devastating entire planets. Their Emperor Solaris has demanded our total submission. Refusal means the annihilation of Earth." Murmurs of disbelief and fear rippled through the council. General Graves, the U.S. chairman of the Joint Chiefs, stood. "Our nuclear arsenal numbers 50,000 warheads. Surely that would make even the Andromedans think twice before invading." Allen shook his head. Solaris boasted of their impenetrable energy shields. "Our nukes would be like throwing pebbles at a tank, and the Andromedan warriors are fanatically loyal. They would gladly sacrifice millions to conquer us." "So what are our options?" the British representative asked, her face pale. "Enslavement or annihilation," Allen said grimly. The chamber erupted into shouting and arguments. The Secretary-General called for order, his voice barely audible over the clamor. "There is one possibility," the Secretary-General said. "Project Damocles." Dr. Sanchez, a small, unassuming woman, took the podium. "For the past decade, our scientists have been reverse engineering technology from the alien starship discovered on the Moon in 2207. We have successfully developed a warp drive, particle beam weapons, and a cloaking device capable of hiding our entire solar system in a dimensional pocket." A stunned silence fell. The implications were staggering. "However," Dr. Sanchez continued, "the cloak is untested and requires a tremendous amount of power. We would be gambling the fate of humanity on an experimental device." The council members looked at each other, the weight of the decision heavy on their shoulders. Allen watched their faces, seeing fear, determination, and resignation. "We have no choice," the Secretary-General said finally. "We cannot submit to slavery, and we cannot fight the Andromedans directly. We must hide and pray the cloak holds long enough for us to build our defenses." The vote was unanimous. Project Damocles would be activated. Earth would disappear before the Andromedan deadline arrived. As the meeting adjourned, the Secretary-General pulled Allen aside. "Robert, I have a mission for you. While Earth is hidden, we need you to lead a diplomatic team to other conquered worlds. Seek out allies, species that hate the Andromedans as much as we do. If we can forge an alliance, we may stand a chance when the time comes to fight." Alan nodded, his jaw set. It was a desperate plan, but it was the only one they had. Far across the galaxy, in his grand throne room, Emperor Solaris watched his sensors with growing rage as Earth vanished from his scopes. The humans had defied him, and they would pay dearly for this insult. "Find them," he snarled to his generals. "Scour every system, every nebula, every dark corner of the universe. And when you discover them, bring them before me. I will torture each one slowly, in full view of the others, until they beg for the mercy of death." The Andromedan war machine mobilized, thousands of ships preparing to hunt down the humans and drag them screaming back to their master. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if the fragile, untested cloak would hold against the coming storm. The UNS Defiance drifted through the void, its hull scorched and pitted from a dozen hard-fought skirmishes. Robert Allen sat in his quarters, poring over the latest intelligence reports. The ship had visited 12 worlds so far, all subjugated by the Andromedan Empire. They found only broken populations, too terrified to resist their conquerors. The crew's morale was low, and Allen himself was beginning to doubt their mission. A chime sounded at his door. "Enter!" Allen called out. Commander Nora Durand, his first officer, stepped inside. Her face was grim. "Another dead end, sir," she reported. "The Kithari barely spoke to our envoys. They're too afraid of Andromedan reprisals." Allen sighed heavily and rubbed his eyes. "We need a win, Nora. Without allies, Earth doesn't stand a chance." "There's one more world on our list," Durand said, handing him a data pad. "Zephyrus, home of the Zephyri. Avian species known for their fierce warrior culture. They resisted Andromedan rule for years before being subjugated." Allen skimmed the file, a glimmer of hope kindling in his chest. "Set a course for Zephyrus. If anyone in this forsaken galaxy still has some fight left in them, it's the Zephyri." The Defiance emerged from warp at the edge of the Zephyrus system. Allen stared at the view screen, taking in the lush green world with its sprawling cities and soaring silver towers. It was hard to believe such a vibrant planet was under the boot of Andromedan oppression. "We're being hailed," the comms officer reported. "Audio only." "Put it through," Allen ordered. A deep, rasping voice filled the bridge. "Human vessel. This is Commander Adrastos of the Zephyri Resistance. State your intentions or be destroyed." Allen leaned forward, choosing his words carefully. "Commander Adrastos, I am Captain Robert Allen of the United Nations ship Defiance. We come in peace, seeking allies against the Andromedan Empire." There was a long pause. Then Adrastos spoke again, his tone wary. "You claim to oppose the Andromedans, yet you fly through their space unmolested. Why should we trust you?" "Meet with me in person," Allen proposed. "I'll explain everything. If you still doubt me, I'll leave your world and never return." Another lengthy silence followed. Finally, Adrastos growled, "Very well, come down to the coordinates I'm sending. But come alone and unarmed. If I suspect treachery, you will die before you can blink." The channel cut off abruptly. Allen turned to Durand, a determined set to his jaw. "Have the shuttle prepped. I'm going down there." An hour later, Allen stepped out of the shuttle onto a wind-swept cliff top. The air was crisp and cool, carrying the scent of alien pine. A dozen Zephyri warriors emerged from the trees, wings folded, pulse rifles aimed at Allen's chest. They were tall and lean, with hawkish features and piercing golden eyes. Their leader, a battle-scarred veteran with jet-black feathers, stepped forward. "I am Adrastos," he said curtly. "You have 5 minutes to convince me not to kill you where you stand." Allen held up his empty hands. "The Andromedan Empire is a plague upon this galaxy. They conquer, enslave, and destroy without mercy. My people have technology that can help defeat them, but we can't do it alone. We need allies, warriors like the Zephyri who know the true face of Andromedan evil." Adrastos narrowed his eyes. "Pretty words, human, but we've heard them before. The Andromedans promised peace and prosperity, then enslaved us with these." He tapped a metal collar around his neck, his voice bitter. "Compliance collars. One thought of rebellion, one flicker of defiance, and they send bolts of agony through every nerve. Our proud warriors are reduced to whimpering thralls. Alan met Adrastos' gaze unflinchingly. What if I could disable the collars? Free your people to fight back. The Zephyri leader scoffed. Impossible. The collars are controlled from the governor's palace behind impenetrable defenses. Nothing is impenetrable, Alan countered. I have a plan. It's risky, but it could work. Adrastos cocked his head, a glimmer of interest in his eyes. I'm listening. Alan outlined his audacious scheme. He proposed allowing himself and Adrastos to be captured by the Andromedans and taken to the governor's palace. Once inside, Adrastos would create a distraction, while Alan hacked into the central control system and broadcast a powerful electromagnetic pulse, frying every collar on Zephyrus. Your warriors must be ready, Alan urged. The moment the collars go offline, you strike hard and fast. My ship will provide air support and advanced weapons. Adrastos was silent for a long moment, weighing the risks and rewards. Finally, he nodded grimly. It's a bold plan, human. Some would call it suicidal, but it's been too long since the Zephyri had any hope. We'll do it your way. The next day, Alan and Adrastos allowed themselves to be captured by an Andromedan patrol. They were beaten, bound, and hauled before the planetary governor, a sneering brute named Talon. He loomed over them, savoring their apparent defeat. The great Adrastos caught at last, Talon gloated. I'll enjoy watching you grovel and beg. Adrastos spat at the governor's feet. I'll die before I kneel to you, Andromedan filth. Talon backhanded the Zephyri across the face, splitting his lip, defiant to the end. But you'll learn obedience, as all slaves do. While Talon was distracted, Alan made his move. He twisted free of his bonds, lunging for the control console on the wall. Adrastos leaped forward, grappling with Talon and his guards, buying Alan precious seconds. Alan's fingers flew over the console, hacking through layer after layer of security with the advanced code-breaking software Dr. Sanchez had provided. Sweat beaded his brow as warning klaxons blared and Andromedan reinforcements pounded at the sealed door. Any time now, human, Adrastos shouted, his wings flaring as he slammed two Andromedans together. Alan input the final command and stabbed the execute button. Got it! A pulse of blue-white energy erupted from the console, washing over the city in an expanding dome. Every compliance collar on the planet sparked and crumbled to dust. In an instant, 1 million Zephyri warriors were free. They rose up as one, falling upon their Andromedan oppressors with terrible fury. The Defiance rained fire from above, its particle beams and EMP missiles sowing chaos and destruction among the enemy ranks. The Zephyri fought with the strength of the desperate and the righteous, their battle cries ringing from the rooftops. In the governor's palace, Talon found himself surrounded by rebels, his guards dead or fleeing. Adrastos seized him by the throat and dragged him to a balcony overlooking a 1,000-foot drop. The Andromedan whimpered and thrashed as Adrastos held him over the edge, wings bound. "Pet, please," Talon stammered. "I surrender. I'll give you anything." Alan watched in fascination as the once arrogant governor blubbered and pleaded. Why is he so terrified? He's not just afraid of dying, he's utterly petrified. Adrastos gave a grim smile. The Andromedans believe that only their souls can navigate the celestial currents that carry them to paradise. To be unable to fly in the next life is their greatest fear. With that, Adrastos hurled Talon from the balcony. The governor's scream dopplered into silence as he vanished into the abyss. The battle for Zephyrus was over. The Andromedans were routed, their rule broken forever. In the aftermath, Adrastos clasped Alan's arm, his eyes shining with gratitude and respect. "You have given us back our freedom, human. The Zephyri stand with Earth against the Andromedan scourge." Alan returned the warrior's fierce grip. "And we're honored to have you at our side. Together we'll teach the Emperor the true meaning of defiance." As the Defiance set course for the next world, Alan allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Zephyrus was liberated, and the Zephyri had pledged their support to the fledgling alliance. More importantly, Adrastos had shared vital intelligence on Andromedan supply routes and fleet movements. But Alan knew their victory would be short-lived. The Andromedans would soon learn of Zephyrus's revolt and come seeking vengeance. The Defiance had to stay one step ahead, striking vulnerable targets before the enemy could react. This was only the beginning, Alan mused as the stars streaked past. 1,000 battles lay ahead, 1,000 worlds to free. But for the first time since the Andromedans came, he dared to hope. The Empire was vast and mighty, but it was not invincible. With courage, cunning, and the indomitable human spirit, they would prevail. The Defiance sailed on through the endless night, a spark of rebellion in the darkness, carrying the fate of galaxies in its wake. Word of the Zephyri rebellion raced through the Andromedan Empire. Conquered species whispered of it in the streets, a spark of hope amidst the gloom of oppression. The occupation troops grew restless, wondering if their subjects might be emboldened to rise up as well. In his grand throne room, Emperor Solaris seethed with barely contained rage. The news of Zephyrus's liberation was a slap in the face, a damning indictment of his rule. He could not let this defiance go unanswered. "Admiral Cadus, attend me," Solaris commanded. The doors parted and Cadus strode in, his black uniform immaculate, his face a mask of cold discipline. He was the Emperor's favored commander, a man who had put down a dozen rebellions with brutal efficiency. "Oh, you summoned me, exalted one?" Cadus knelt before the throne. "The Zephyri have forgotten their place," Solaris said, his voice tight with anger. "Remind them of the price of defiance. Make an example of them, Admiral. Leave no doubt as to the fate of those who challenge my will." "As you command, Emperor." Cadus bowed deeply and departed, already plotting his campaign of terror. The Andromedan fleet descended on Zephyrus like a swarm of locusts. Cadus wasted no time, ordering an immediate orbital bombardment. The once proud cities of the Zephyri were reduced to rubble, the screams of the dying drowned out by the roar of the bombs. Adrastos rallied his warriors, leading them in a valiant defense of their homeland. But for all their courage, they were heavily outmatched. The Andromedan ships seemed endless, their weapons far superior. As fire rained from the sky and his fighters fell one by one, Adrastos knew he had only one chance. He raced to the comm station and hailed the UNS Defiance on an encrypted channel. "Captain Allen, this is Adrastos. Zephyrus is under heavy assault. We can't hold them off much longer. Please, we need your help." Aboard the Defiance, Allen heard the desperation in the Zephyri commander's voice. The Defiance had been deep behind enemy lines, raiding Andromedan supply convoys to weaken their grip on the conquered worlds. But he couldn't abandon Adrastos and his people to slaughter. "We're on our way, Adrastos. Hold fast." Allen cut the transmission and turned to his crew. "Set a course for Zephyrus, maximum warp." The Defiance leapt to light speed, racing toward the besieged planet, but even as they approached the system, Allen knew they were outclassed. Cadus had brought the cream of the Andromedan war machine. The Defiance would last minutes against that kind of firepower. Studying the sensor readouts, an idea began to form in Allen's mind. It was insanely risky, the kind of maneuver that got cadets drummed out of the academy. But if it worked... "Helm, plot a hyperspace micro-jump. I want to come out of warp right on top of Cadus's flagship." The navigator balked. "Sir, that's suicide. We'll be inside their shields at point-blank range." "Exactly." Allen's grin was fierce. "They won't have time to react. Stand by on the EMP torpedoes." The Defiance shuddered as it dropped out of warp mere kilometers from the Andromedan flagship. For a heartbeat, the massive warship loomed before them, its gun batteries swiveling to lock on. "Fire!" A volley of shimmering blue torpedoes leaped from the Defiance's launch tubes, slamming into the flagship's hull. Electromagnetic pulses rippled across its surface, shorting out systems and leaving the ship dark and helpless. "Open a channel to Cadus, audio only." There was a hiss of static, then a voice thick with arrogance and anger. "Human ship, you dare strike at the Emperor's fist. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift." Allen leaned forward, his tone cold as the void. Admiral Cadis, this is Captain Robert Allen of the UNS Defiance. A few things you should know. First, I've just disabled your ship's power systems. You're a sitting duck. I only delay the inevitable, human, Cadus sneered. I have a dozen ships ready to blast you to atoms. Which brings me to my second point, Allen continued calmly. While you were busy gloating, I beamed an antimatter charge onto your bridge. It's set to detonate the instant you make a move against my ship or the Zephyri. The yield is enough to vaporize your flagship and everyone aboard her. There was a long, horrified silence. Allen could almost hear Cadus's rage and disbelief warring with his sense of self-preservation. Finally, the Andromedan spoke, his voice shaking with barely suppressed fury. This isn't over, human. You've made an enemy today. I'll add you to the list, Allen said dryly. Now order your fleet to withdraw and spread the word. Zephyrus is off limits. With a snarl of pure hate, Cadus cut the transmission. Moments later, the Andromedan ships began to pull away from the planet, jumping to warp one by one until only the crippled flagship remained. On the surface, the Zephyri cheered as the bombardment ceased, and the enemy vanished from the sky. In the ruins of his command center, Adrastos raised a fist in triumph, his heart swelling with gratitude and admiration for the humans who had saved his world. Light years away in the heart of the Andromedan throne world, Emperor Solaris watched the debacle unfold with cold, merciless eyes. This latest humiliation could not stand. Someone would pay for this disgrace. Cadus materialized before him, head bowed in contrition. Exalted one, I can explain. Silence, Solaris roared. You have failed me, Cadus, failed the Empire. Your weakness has allowed the humans to gain another victory. The Admiral prostrated himself on the polished floor, trembling. Mercy, Emperor. Give me another chance to crush the Defiance and its cursed captain. Solaris regarded him with disdain. You are unworthy of your rank, your uniform, your very name. I hereby strip you of all titles and cast you out from my sight. Pray that we do not meet again, Cadus. The former admiral rose unsteadily, his face a mask of shame and hatred. He looked up at his emperor, eyes smouldering with venomous rage. Allen, he hissed, I will find him and I will make him suffer. I will visit such horrors upon him and all humans that the galaxy will tremble at the mere mention of my name. This I swear, on my life and my soul. With that, Cadus turned and stalked from the throne room, his mind consumed with thoughts of revenge. The Emperor watched him go, already dismissing the broken creature from his thoughts. There were more pressing matters to attend to. The humans had proven far more troublesome than anticipated. It was time to unleash the Empire's darkest weapons and most terrifying servants. The gloves were coming off. The chime of an incoming transmission stirred Captain Allen from his thoughts as he stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the stars streak by. He tapped the comm panel, and a familiar face filled the view screen. Captain, I have news from Earth, said Ambassador Liu, the UEDC's chief diplomat. Our world's leaders have finally united in the face of the Andromedan threat. The United Earth Defense Council is now coordinating our war effort, with General Graves as Supreme Commander. Allen felt a surge of relief. That's the best news I've heard in weeks. What about our tech advantage? Liu smiled. Dr. Sanchez is working around the clock to reverse engineer the wreckage you've sent. She's made breakthroughs in shield technology and plasma weaponry, and the UEDC has sent envoys to formalize our alliance with the liberated worlds. The captain nodded, his mind already racing with the possibilities. We'll need every ship and soldier we can get. The Andromedans won't take our victories lying down. No, they won't, Liu agreed grimly. Our intel suggests Emperor Solaris is amassing an armada like nothing we've ever seen. He's also threatening to wipe out any species that joins us. Allen's jaw clenched. Bastard. He knows many of the conquered worlds are too beaten down to resist. Some, perhaps, but not all. Liu's eyes gleamed with determination. Your actions have sparked hope, Captain. The Zephyri and others are living proof that the Andromedans can be defeated. We must fan those flames of rebellion. Agreed. Every world we free is one more nail in Solaris's coffin. Alan straightened his shoulders. We'll keep up the pressure, Ambassador. The Defiance won't rest until the Empire falls. As Lou signed off, Alan felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead was long and bloody, but for the first time, victory seemed within reach. The Defiance's next stop was Kepler 186f, a lush green world orbiting a red dwarf star. As they entered the system, Alan was surprised to detect human life signs on the surface. "That's impossible," he muttered. Kepler 186f was surveyed by probes centuries ago before the Andromedans came. It was uninhabited. "Shall I hail them, sir?" asked Lieutenant Xiang, the comms officer. "Do it. Let's find out who our mystery cousins are." The viewscreen flickered to life, revealing a stern-faced man in a crisp white uniform. "Unknown vessel. You have entered restricted space of the Keplerian Dominion. Identify yourself immediately." Alan raised an eyebrow. "This is Captain Robert Allen of the UNS Defiance, representing the United Earth Alliance. We come in peace, seeking allies against the Andromedan Empire." The Keplerian officer's expression hardened. "Earth? We have no dealings with your world, Captain, nor do we wish to be entangled in your war." "I don't think you understand," Alan pressed. "The Andromedans are a threat to all humanity, including your people. If we don't stand together—" "Enough!" The officer cut him off with a sharp gesture. "Kepler 186f has endured for centuries by avoiding the follies of the wider galaxy. We will not abandon that policy now. You have 1 hour to depart our space. Any attempt to land on our world will be met with force." With that, the transmission cut out, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Alan slumped back in his chair, frustration etched on his face. Isolationists, they think they can just hide away and let the rest of us burn. "Sir, we can't just leave them," urged Commander Nakamura, the tactical officer. "If the Andromedans find this place, they'll enslave the Keplerians too, or worse." "I know, Akira, but we can't force them to fight." Alan sighed heavily. "Helm set a course out of the system. We'll try again with the next world." As the Defiance prepared to depart, a proximity alert sounded. A small shuttle had emerged from the planet's surface, broadcasting a hailing frequency. "Captain, we're being signaled," Zhang reported. "It's not from the Keplerian authorities." Alan frowned. "Put it through." A young woman's face appeared on the screen, her features fine-boned and elegant. "Captain Allen, my name is Ilara. I'm a scientist from Kepler 186f, and I need your help." "I'm listening, but I thought your people wanted nothing to do with us." Ilara's eyes flashed with determination. "Not all of us share our leader's isolationist views. I believe the Andromedans must be stopped, and I want to help you do it." Alan leaned forward. "What exactly are you offering, Ilara?" "My shuttle contains schematics and prototypes of advanced Keplerian technology, quantum computing, zero-point energy, things your Earth scientists have only dreamed of. I'm defecting to your alliance, Captain. Let me help you save my people, whether they want it or not." For a long moment, Alan weighed his options. The Keplerians would surely view this as a betrayal, a violation of their strict non-interference policy. But if Ilara's gifts could turn the tide of the war— "Very well. You may come aboard, Ilara, but I hope you understand the consequences of your choice." She met his gaze unflinchingly. "I do, Captain. My world may curse my name, but I'm ready to do what must be done. For Kepler, for Earth, for all humanity." As the shuttle docked, and Ilara stepped onto the Defiance, Alan couldn't shake the feeling that the young scientist's arrival marked a turning point. The path ahead was murkier than ever, but one thing was crystal clear. The war had only just begun. Ilara's arrival on the Defiance brought a flurry of activity as she worked to integrate Keplerian technology into the ship's systems. The engineering crew marveled at the elegance and efficiency of her designs, which made their own efforts seem clumsy by comparison. Shield generators were replaced with sleeker, more powerful units that could shrug off even the most devastating Andromedan weapons. The warp drive was fine-tuned to allow for longer jumps and quicker recharging. Even the humble replicators were upgraded, much to the delight of the crew who could now enjoy a wider variety of meals. But not everyone welcomed Ilara with open arms. In the mess hall, crewman Diaz slammed his tray down, nearly splattering his tablemates with gravy. "I don't trust her," he growled, jabbing a finger towards Ilara, who sat alone, engrossed in a datapad. "Her people abandoned us, left us to fight the Andromedans alone, and now she waltzes in like some sort of savior. It doesn't sit right." "She's here to help," countered Ensign Liu, although her tone lacked conviction. "The captain vouched for her." Diaz snorted. "The captain's too trusting. Mark my words, she'll bring us nothing but trouble." As the crew grappled with Ilara's presence, a far more sinister drama unfolded in the heart of the Andromedan Empire. Emperor Solaris stalked the halls of his palace, his eyes wild with paranoia. He saw conspiracies in every shadow, betrayal in every whispered conversation. His advisors, once so eager to curry favor, now cowered in fear as he ranted and raved about loyalty and obedience. Prince Vakarian, the Emperor's only son, dared to speak out during a war council. "Father, this path leads only to ruin," he pleaded, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and resolve. "The humans have shown they are willing to negotiate. If we could just—" "Negotiate?" Solaris spat the word like poison. "With those primitives, they exist only to serve us, to kneel at our feet, and you would have me treat them as equals?" His eyes narrowed to slits. "You disappoint me, Vakarian. I thought I had raised a worthy heir, but I see now that you are weak, tainted by human ideals." He turned to his guards, who stood at rigid attention. "Seize him! The prince has betrayed the Empire, betrayed me. He must face the consequences." Vakarian struggled as the guards grabbed him, their grip like iron. "Father, please, your arrogance will destroy us all. The humans are not the threat. It's your own cruelty that will be our undoing." But Solaris was unmoved. He watched impassively as his son was dragged away, screaming until his voice was raw. "I am the Empire," he declared, his voice ringing through the chamber. "Its will is my will, its glory is my glory, and I will not rest until every human kneels before me, or is ground to dust beneath my feet." Light years away, Captain Allen pored over the latest intelligence reports, his brow furrowed with concern. The Andromedan fleet was on the move, a vast armada that dwarfed anything the Resistance had faced before. But it was the flagship that caught his eye, a monstrous dreadnought known as the Invictus. Rumors spoke of a weapon that could shatter planets, a power so terrible that even the Andromedans feared to use it. But it was the occupant of the Invictus that truly chilled Allen's blood. Emperor Solaris himself, the ruthless tyrant who had enslaved half the galaxy. If they could capture or kill him, it would throw the Empire into chaos, giving the Resistance a fighting chance. It was a desperate gamble, but Allen saw no other choice. He called Ilara to his ready room, his mind already racing with half-formed plans. She listened intently as he laid out his idea, her eyes widening with a mix of fear and determination. "I can get us aboard the Invictus," she said at last, her voice steady. "I've been working on a cloaking device, something that can fool even Andromedan sensors. But, Captain—" She hesitated, biting her lip. "You know this is a suicide mission. Even if we succeed, the chances of getting out alive are—" "I know." Allen's voice was grim. "But this war has always been about sacrifice. If we can end Solaris's reign of terror, it will be worth it." As they made their preparations, a sense of foreboding settled over the ship. They were about to attempt the impossible, to strike at the very heart of the Andromedan Empire, and at the center of it all loomed Solaris, a being of such malevolence and power that even the void of space seemed to tremble at his presence. Allen took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. One way or another, the end was coming. He could only pray that when the dust settled, there would still be a future worth fighting for. The shuttle docked with the Invictus, its cloaking device rendering it invisible to the Andromedan sensors. Allen and his hand-picked team of infiltrators emerged, clad in stolen armor that allowed them to blend in with the ship's crew. They moved swiftly through the corridors, Elara guiding them with the knowledge she had gleaned during her time on the Defiance. As they approached the bridge, a sense of unease settled over Alan. This all seemed too easy. His instincts screamed that something was wrong, but there was no turning back now. They burst onto the bridge, weapons drawn, only to find Empress Alaris waiting for them. The towering Andromedan was flanked by a dozen of his elite guards, each one a formidable warrior. Solaris laughed, a cold and cruel sound that echoed through the chamber. "Did you really think you could surprise me, Captain Alan? I've known your every move since the moment you left Earth." Alan's blood ran cold as he saw Ilara's face drain of color. The Emperor fixed his gaze on her, his eyes glinting with malice. "You have served your purpose well, my dear," Solaris purred. "A pity you never realized the truth. Did you never wonder why your own people shunned you? Why you felt so drawn to the humans' cause?" Ilara shook her head, her voice trembling. "What are you talking about?" "I planted a chip in your brain when you were a child on Kepler 180F. You've been my unwitting spy, feeding me information on the human rebellion. Your desire to help them, your very thoughts, were never truly your own." Ilara reeled as if struck, her world shattering around her. Alan reached out to steady her, his heart aching at the depth of Solaris' cruelty. "You monster," Alan growled. "How could you do this to one of your own people?" Solaris shrugged. "She was a means to an end, nothing more. As are you, Captain. Did you truly believe you could challenge the might of the Andromedan Empire and survive?" Hilara's eyes blazed with sudden fury. With a scream of rage, she lunged at Solaris, a hidden blade flashing in her hand. The Emperor's guards moved to intercept her, but she fought like a woman possessed, her anger giving her strength. Alan and his team leapt into action, desperately trying to fight their way to Ilara's side. But the elite guards were too strong, too fast. One by one, Alan's soldiers fell, until only he and Ilara remained standing. Just as the guards closed in for the kill, the doors to the bridge burst open once more. Prince Vicarion strode in, flanked by a contingent of his own loyal soldiers. The prince's face was grim, his eyes haunted by the weight of his choices. "Father," Vicarion called out, "your reign of terror ends now. You have betrayed our people, led us down a path of destruction and sorrow. I can no longer stand by and watch you tear the Empire apart." Solaris snarled, his face contorting with rage. "You dare to defy me, boy? I made you, and I can unmake you just as easily." Father and son clashed in a titanic duel, their energy blades crackling and sparking as they met again and again. Alan seized the opportunity, rallying his remaining strength to fight off the distracted guards and pull Ilara to safety. Together they fought their way off the bridge, planting explosive charges as they went. The Invictus shuddered and groaned as the explosions tore through its hull, crippling the mighty warship. As they raced towards the shuttle bay, Alan spared a glance back at the bridge. Through the smoke and chaos he saw Vicarion standing over his father's fallen form. The prince had triumphed, but at a terrible cost. Solaris's blade had found its mark, even as Vicarion struck the fatal blow. The prince met Alan's gaze, his eyes filled with pain and sorrow. "Go," he whispered, his voice carrying across the distance. "Save as many of my people as you can, before the Empire consumes itself in the flames of its own arrogance." With a heavy heart, Alan turned away, helping a shell-shocked Ilara into the waiting shuttle. As they sped away from the crippled Invictus, he couldn't help but wonder if the price of victory had been too high. The Andromedan Empire was crumbling, but how many more would suffer before the end? The Defiance shuddered as the shockwaves from the Invictus' destruction buffeted its shields. Alan gripped the armrests of his chair, his knuckles white as he watched the once mighty Andromedan flagship break apart on the viewscreen. Debris spun through the void, glittering in the light of distant stars. It was a sight he had scarcely dared to hope for, a symbol of the Empire's seemingly invincible power reduced to nothing more than floating wreckage. "Captain, we're receiving transmissions from across the Andromedan fleet," Xiang reported, her voice tinged with disbelief. "News of Solaris's death is spreading like wildfire. Their command structure is in chaos." Alan leaned forward, hardly daring to breathe. This was the moment they had been fighting for, the chance to strike a decisive blow against the Empire. What about the subjugated worlds? Any signs of uprising? Ilara, who had been monitoring the communications, turned to face him. Her eyes shone with a fierce hope. "They're rising up, Captain. The Zephyri, the Keplarians, even the Hoda'al. They're taking advantage of the confusion to overthrow their Andromedan overlords." A cheer went up from the bridge crew, but Alan held up a hand for silence. "This isn't over yet. We need to press our advantage, hit the Andromedans hard and fast while they're still reeling." He brought up a holographic map of the galaxy, marking key Andromedan strongholds. "We'll lead a coalition of rebel ships, strike at these strategic targets. If we can liberate enough worlds, we might just be able to turn the tide of this war." The Defiance spearheaded the offensive, its advanced weaponry and shields, bolstered by Ilara's Keplarian technology, proving more than a match for the disorganized Andromedan forces. One by one the strongholds fell, the once conquered peoples joining the swelling ranks of the rebel fleet. But even as they celebrated each victory, Alan couldn't shake a sense of unease. He knew that not all Andromedans would accept defeat so easily. That hunch was confirmed when a transmission came in from Earth, the signal fuzzy with interference. "Captain Allen, this is General Graves." The old soldier's face was grim. "We've got a situation here. A group of Andromedan hardliners led by Admiral Cadus has launched an all-out assault on Earth. They're throwing everything they've got at us." Alan's blood ran cold. Cadus, the ruthless commander he had humiliated during the battle for Zephyrus. Of course he wouldn't let that grudge go. "We're on our way, General. Hold the line." The Defiance tore through hyperspace, pushing its engines to the limit. When they dropped out of warp above Earth, they emerged into a scene of chaos. The skies were filled with the flashes of weapons fire and the tumbling wreckage of destroyed ships. At the center of it all was Cadus's flagship, a monstrous warship bristling with enough firepower to reduce a planet to ashes. The UEDC fleet, a ragtag assemblage of human and alien ships, fought with grim determination, but they were clearly outmatched. Even the advanced tech provided by Dr. Sanchez and their allies could only do so much against the sheer size and power of Cadus's dreadnought. Alan wasted no time in throwing the Defiance into the fray, its weapons slicing through the enemy ranks. He targeted the weak points they had identified during their time on the Invictus, the knowledge hard-won through blood and sacrifice. But Cadus was a cunning adversary. As his ship took damage, he maneuvered it into a lower orbit, its weapons now aimed directly at Earth's surface. A holo transmission blinked onto the screen, revealing the Admiral's hate-twisted face. "Surrender now, human," he snarled, "or I will shatter your world's crust. You've seen the power of our weaponry. You know this is no idle threat." Alan stared at the screen, his mind racing. He thought of the billions of lives on the planet below, the countless more across the galaxy who were counting on him. And then, in a flash of inspiration, he remembered something Adrastos had told him about the Andromedan's deepest fears. He opened a broadcast channel, his voice ringing out across the battlefield. "Soldiers of the Andromedan Empire, hear me now. I am Captain Alan of the Defiance, and I offer you a choice." He took a deep breath, hoping against hope that his gamble would pay off. "Lay down your arms and you will be spared. You will be allowed to return to your homeworld, to live out your lives in peace. But if you continue to fight, know that you will be destroyed, and in death you will be unable to join your ancestors in the afterlife. The celestial currents will be forever barred to you, your souls condemned to wander the void for eternity." For a long, tense moment there was silence. Then, one by one, the Andromedan ships began to power down their weapons, their crews emerging with their hands raised in surrender. On the bridge of his flagship, Cadus watched in disbelief as his support crumbled around him. Faced with the prospect of eternal damnation, his soldiers had abandoned him. The once proud admiral slumped in his chair, the fight draining out of him. He looked up at the screen, meeting Alan's gaze. "You've won, human," he said, his voice hollow. I won't give you the satisfaction of my surrender, but know this, the Empire will rise again, stronger and more powerful than ever. And when that day comes, we will remember what you did here." With those final words, Kaidas cut the transmission. Moments later, his ship exploded in a blinding flash of light, the Admiral choosing death over the humiliation of defeat. With Kaidas's broken form consumed by the exploding wreckage of his flagship, the remaining Andromedan forces scattered. Surrendering by the hundreds, they became prisoners of the UEDC fleet and rebel ships. News of Solaris's death and the destruction of the Invictus spread through the Andromedan ranks like a shockwave, decimating their will to fight. Over the following weeks and months, the Andromedan Empire splintered, collapsing in on itself as a black hole consumes a dying star. The races the Andromedans once subjugated seized their chance, rising up and overthrowing their weakened masters. One by one, the Empire's holdings fell, its once mighty fleets reduced to drifting debris and its armies left leaderless and broken. From the chaos, a new order emerged. The freed races, led by the humans of Earth and their allies, formed the Galactic Council, a forum where all species could come together as equals to forge a path towards a brighter future. Earth, with its advanced technologies, reverse-engineered from the Andromedan wreckage, and the strategic brilliance of its military leaders, found itself thrust into the role of a major power. Alan, the hero who had brought down an empire, was appointed as Earth's ambassador to the Council. His task was to ensure the fragile peace that had been won at such a high cost would endure. It was a heavy burden, but one he shouldered with the same determination that had carried him through the war. But the wounds left by the conflict were deep and slow to heal. For the proud Andromedans, stripped of their power and prestige, the humiliation of defeat festered into bitter resentment. Some refused to accept this new reality, clinging to dreams of a restored empire. These extremist groups began a campaign of terrorism, striking at Earth and its colonies in an attempt to shatter the new galactic order. One such attack hit painfully close to home for Alan. A bomb smuggled into a UEDC research facility claimed the life of Dr. Sanchez, the brilliant scientist who had unlocked the secrets of Andromedan technology. For Alan, it was a devastating personal loss. Sanchez had been more than a colleague. He had been a friend, a mentor, a guiding light in the darkness of war. As he struggled to process his grief, Alan received word that Ilara had left Earth. The trauma of her experiences, the guilt she felt over her unwitting role as Solaris's pawn, had proven too much for her to bear. She had returned to Kepler 186F, seeking solace and a chance to rebuild among her own people. Alan understood her pain all too well. There were moments when the weight of all he had seen and done threatened to crush him, when he wondered if the price of victory had been too high. But he knew he couldn't afford to falter. Too many were counting on him on Earth to shepherd the galaxy into an era of peace and stability. That fragile hope was shattered when reports began to filter in from the fringes of known space. Outlying colonies, on the very edge of the galactic frontier, had gone dark, all communication suddenly severed. When scout ships were sent to investigate, they found only silent ruins and drifting wreckage. Survivors were few, but those who were found spoke of an attack by strange alien ships unlike anything ever encountered. Rumors began to circulate of a new threat, a vast empire from beyond the Milky Way's edge, technologically advanced and ruthlessly expansionist. A civilization that viewed all other life as either a resource to be exploited or an obstacle to be destroyed. As the galaxy began to brace for the possibility of another war, Alan found himself once again on the bridge of the Defiance. The scars of countless battles marked its hull, a testament to all it had endured. As he looked out at the stars, Alan couldn't help but wonder if the cycle of conflict and destruction that had defined his life would ever truly end. But he knew one thing for certain. As long as he drew breath, as long as the Defiance remained spaceworthy, he would fight to defend the peace they had won. The sacrifices of all those who had fought and died beside him would not be in vain. The Defiance, and the indomitable human spirit it represented, would stand against the coming darkness, no matter the cost. The Galactic Council chamber was in an uproar. Representatives from a dozen worlds shouted and argued, their voices echoing off the vaulted ceiling. In the center of the chaos stood Alan, his face a mask of grim determination. "The Virium are not just a threat to the outer colonies," he said, his voice cutting through the din. "They're a threat to every living being in the galaxy. We must stand together, or we will fall alone." But his words fell on deaf ears. The Zephyri ambassador, her feathers ruffled with agitation, spoke up. "You humans always expect us to fight your battles for you. We've barely recovered from the last war. Why should we risk our lives for your colonies?" Alan bit back a sharp retort. He knew he couldn't afford to alienate potential allies, not now. This isn't about humans or Zephyri or Andromedans. It's about survival. The Virium won't stop at the outer colonies. They'll keep coming world by world until there's nothing left. The Keplarian representative, a tall, slender being with luminous eyes, raised a long-fingered hand. "And what do you propose, Ambassador Alan, that we throw our ships and soldiers against an enemy we barely understand? We need more information before we can commit to a course of action." Alan nodded. "I agree. That's why I'm proposing a reconnaissance mission. A small team, led by myself, will infiltrate the Virium command ship and gather intelligence on their technology and their motives. Once we have a better understanding of what we're up against, we can devise a strategy to stop them." The chamber erupted into a new round of arguments. Some called Alan's plan foolhardy, others insisted on a more cautious approach. In the end, the council voted to approve the mission, but with a catch. Alan would have to secure the support of the Andromedans, the very people he had fought against for so long. The journey to the Andromedan homeworld was long and tense. Alan couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into a trap, but he had no choice. Without Andromedan support, the mission would be doomed to failure. The meeting with the Andromedan leaders was as difficult as Alan had feared. They were proud and stubborn, still smarting from their defeat at the hands of the humans, but Alan was nothing if not persistent. "The Virium are a creation of your ancestors," he said, looking the Andromedan High Commander in the eye. "You have a responsibility to help us stop them." The High Commander sneered. "And why should we clean up the mess you humans have made? You destroyed our empire, humiliated our people. Give me one good reason why we should lift a finger to help you." Alan leaned forward, his voice low and intense. "Because if the Virium succeed, there won't be an Andromedan empire left to rebuild. There won't be anything left at all." There was a long, tense silence. Finally, the High Commander nodded. "Very well. We will provide you with a ship and a small contingent of our best warriors, but mark my words, human. If you fail, if the Virium are not stopped, the blame will fall squarely on your shoulders." The mission to infiltrate the Virium command ship was fraught with danger from the start. The alien vessel was massive, a twisted labyrinth of organic and mechanical components. Alan and his team, a mix of humans and Andromedans, fought their way through hordes of Virium warriors, their weapons barely making a dent in the creature's armor. But Alan was determined. He hacked into the ship's systems, searching for any information that could help them understand their enemy. And then he found it. A central AI, a vast, pulsing mass of circuitry and biomatter that controlled the Virium hive mind. "This is it," he said, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and excitement. "If we can destroy this, we can stop the Virium once and for all." But before they could act, the Virium were upon them. Alan and his team fought with everything they had, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. One by one, his companions fell, until only Alan was left, battered and bloody, but still standing. He knew what he had to do. With a final, desperate effort, he planted the explosives around the AI core. Then he turned to face the oncoming horde of Virium, a grim smile on his face. "Come on, you bastards," he growled. "Let's finish this." The explosions ripped through the command ship, tearing it apart from the inside. Alan felt the heat of the blast, felt the shrapnel tearing into his flesh. But he didn't care. He had done what he set out to do. The Virium were finished, their central intelligence destroyed. As the darkness closed in around him, Alan's thoughts turned to Earth, to the countless billions he had fought to protect. He thought of his friends, of Ilara and Adrastos, and all the others who had stood by his side through the long years of war. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice lost in the roar of the exploding ship. "I wish I could be there to see the galaxy you'll build." But even as the life drained from his body, Alan felt a sense of peace. He had given everything he had, and in the end, it had been enough. The galaxy would endure, united by the sacrifices of those who had fought and died for its future. And though Alan would never live to see it, he knew that somewhere on a distant world, a monument would rise, a testament to the courage and resilience of the human spirit, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope could never be extinguished. The galaxy would remember Robert Allen, the hero who had given his life so that others might live, and in that memory, he would live forever. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.